Free will, guys. Free will. This is chapter 21, Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. We're going to cover this, and there's actually a question right here that I probably have. I got 1,000 questions about this week. Okay, so I'm going to answer all 1,000 of those questions right now in this video today, and this is Neville Goddard's Power of Awareness. Okay, so the question is right here. What should you do? What should be done in between the assumption of the wish fulfilled, well, when you're imagining you're falling asleep with your new wish fulfilled, and its realization, when it materializes in your world, when it is manifested in your world? What do you do in the middle of that while you're so-called waiting? I'm going to cover that, okay, in this video. Neville Goddard gives his explanation here, but I'm going to break this down even further. He is absolutely right, but I'm going to explain that a little bit further so you can understand exactly what you're supposed to do, you know, in between when you've manifested, when you're trying to manifest something, or when you're imagining something, falling asleep with something, and you're waiting for it to happen. I'm going to break all that down in this video today. All right, so let's get started right here. Neville Goddard jumps right out and says nothing. You absolutely do nothing. And I think a lot of people get this, that misconstrue this. Okay, so what Neville Goddard says here, it says nothing. That means you don't take action, you don't do this, you just lay on a couch all day, which is, this is not correct. I'm going to break this down today. I mean, there are things that can come to you not doing anything. There's a lot of things that can come to you naturally that way, but we're going to break this down. Okay, so Neville Goddard says, nothing. You do nothing. It is an illusion. Other than assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you can do anything to aid the realization of your desire. And what he means here is that your world, which quantum physics is showing now, which wasn't showing that before when because Neville Goddard's way before his time. He knew all this already. But now we're showing that your world is projected from inside of you out. So your 3D world is from inside of you projecting like a movie screen, okay? You're like the projector. You're projecting the movie that you see in your 3D world. When you wake up in the morning, the life that you're living is all being projected from inside of you out into your world. So you're living in a movie right now that you scripted yesterday by your inner dialogue, by your assumptions, by your feelings, what you're falling asleep with. That feeling that you're falling asleep with is being projected. So you cannot change anything by reacting to it in your 3D world, by reacting negatively. You can react positively to something in your 3D world and then change that feeling state, and then use it as fuel as something is changing your inner being, and then falling asleep with a new inner being, and then tomorrow it will change. But you cannot change anything in your 3D world without first changing your inner dialogue, your assumptions, your feeling states, the person that you are. You're not going to change anything on your 3D world, and if you try to, it's just going to get worse because you're acting negatively, you're reacting negatively to the things that are happening that you don't like. So then you're creating a new version of yourself that is being impressed, that is recreating this and writing a whole new script for your new movie tomorrow. So that's what Neville Goddard is talking about here, that you can do nothing to change your 3D world. Change your 3D world in that aspect of free will and what you should do, okay? So essentially, when you're imagining something, it's going to come to you naturally based on your feeling state and your assumptions and your inner dialogue. So there's nothing that you can change on your 3D world by attacking it besides changing your inner being, by changing your inner dialogue. That's what produces the natural effect of your manifestation is inward. Everything is inside of you. Nothing is outside of you. And that's what Neville Goddard means here by doing nothing, okay? So let's continue to cover this right here. This is Neville Goddard. You think that you can do something. You want to do something. You want to do something in your 3D world to change stuff that you don't like. You're like, okay, this person is not supposed to say this to me. This wasn't supposed to happen. That's not what I imagined. You know, and these things start happening, so you want to start attacking them in your 3D world, but you don't do that. You want to do that, but actually you can do nothing because this will not change anything in your 3D world. The illusion of free will to do is but ignorance of the law of assumption, because the law of assumption states that everything is within you, and that's the truth. Everything is within you, so you cannot attack anything in your 3D world. It's just a hologram. It's like trying to change a hologram. You can't change. You have to go to the projector, which is you, and that's your inner dialogue. Those are your assumptions, what you're assuming to be true and consent to as true in your world. Okay, so the illusion of free will is but ignorance of the law of assumption upon which all action is based. Everything happens automatically based on your inner dialogue. Everything happens automatically from your inner dialogue. Your present concept of self is producing the world that you're living in. So That is the only thing that you can do. It's the only free will you have is to change your inner concept of self, okay? And then what you react to in your 3D world, which ultimately just changes your concept of self. So basically, you can do nothing, like Neville Goddard says. All that befalls you, all that is done by you happens. Okay, so your assumptions, conscious or unconscious, direct all thought and action to their fulfillment. Okay, so all of your inner dialogue, your inner talking, your assumptions, conscious or unconscious, they direct all thought and action to their fulfillment. So if you're falling asleep, with $3 million, okay, so you're doing this, you're following the meditations, you're living as if you're in the perfect life. There's things that are going to happen to you that are going to, make you want to take action. There's just going to be certain things that are going to happen in your world, like doors are going to open, and that you're going to be pushed into these doors, or these things are going to come to you based on this, based on your concept of yourself. You're going to be pushed in directions to get that $3 million. So you allow those things to happen, but these are automatic things that are going to happen. You're going to act automatically based on your new present being into this new world. You're going to transfer to a new reality based on your concept of yourself, okay? So to understand the law of assumption, to be convinced of its truth, means getting rid of all the illusions about free will to act externally, okay? So get rid of all that, everything. Get rid of all the illusions that you have free will to act in your exterior world, your 3D hologram. You do not. Everything is based within you. Okay, so you want to change something, change yourself first, then everything else will reflect that change. It will mirror that change. Free will actually means freedom to select any idea you desire, okay? Free will means you have the freedom to select your feeling states, your assumptions, your inner dialogue. That is the only free will you have, okay? So that's what Neville Goddard, this is the truth. This is the absolute truth about your world that most people don't know about, okay? So free will actually means freedom to select any idea you desire, any feeling state, any assumption, any inner dialogue. By assuming the idea already to be a fact, it is converted into reality because you've impressed the subconscious mind with this new world that you're living in. You assume something to be true, and you tell the subconscious mind this is actually really happening to you. Then it takes you to that parallel reality where that is actually happening. And these things are going to happen automatically. It's going to be automatically. You don't have to do anything. They're automatically going to happen, okay? So by assuming the idea already to be a fact, it is converted into reality. Beyond that, free will ends, and everything happens in harmony with the concept assumed. All right, so I can of mine own self do nothing, because I seek not mine own will, but the will of the Father which hath sent me. John 5:30 was telling us this in the Bible. Of course, it's written symbolically, but now we're breaking, because our conscious awareness is expanded so much that we're able to extract the true meanings from the Bible here. John 5:30. Okay, so in this quotation, the Father obviously refers to God. In an earlier chapter, God is defined as I am. Since creation is finished, the Father is never in a position of saying, I will be. In other words, the future exists right now. The past exists right now. Everything exists in the present moment at all times in the fourth dimension, okay, time and space. So since creation is finished, everything exists right now. The Father is never in a position of saying, I will be. In other words, everything exists, and the infinite I am consciousness can speak only in the present tense. I am. I am. I am. There's never I will be. It's always I am, because the present moment is all existing right now. That's the future is right now. The past is right now. Everything exists right now. So you always say I am. Not my will, but thine be done. This is Luke 22:42. I will be is a confession that I am not. I will be is a confession that I am not. The Father's will is always I am, because the future exists now and the past exists right now. So everything is right now in the fourth dimension, time, space. You never say I will be. It's always I am, okay? Always. Until you realize that you are the Father, there is only one I am, and the infinite self is that I am. Your will is always I will be. Okay, so until you realize that you are the Father, that Christ lives in you, God lives within you, you are a particle of God, then that is the case. In the law of assumption, your consciousness of being is the Father's will. This is actually a really important part here, guys. Okay, so I'm going to cover this one more time. In the law of assumption, your consciousness of being is the Father's will. The mere wish without this consciousness is the my will. Okay, so ego, okay, attaching ego to it, not knowing that you are, that God lives within you. Not knowing that God lives within you, then it's my will or your will. It's not God's will. Okay, so when you attach the ego to these things, it separates you from all power, all energy of being, with no separateness. And that when you have no separateness, when everything is contained within itself, and you are all energy connected with God, that's when you're the most powerful at manifesting anything. But when you create this my will, when you say mine, then that means you're separated, okay? Then you've gone back to separateness and you've lost all your power, okay? So that's what Neville Goddard is talking about right here. In the law of assumption, your consciousness of being is the Father's will, okay? So it is impossible to do anything. You must be in order to do. Then he gets back to being. Who are you being? Are you being a particle of God, or are you being an egotistical my will? Okay, this is my way, but really it's God's way, but God lives within you. Okay, so if you had a different concept of yourself, everything would be different. Okay, so he gets back to this with free will. Okay. Free will only exists in the assumptive world. So right here, if you had a different concept of yourself, everything in your world would change. Not necessarily your world would change. Actually, yeah, you would transfer to a different parallel universe when your concept of yourself changes. Because as soon as you impress this new version of yourself within the subconscious mind, you're transferred to another parallel reality that corresponds, that connects to this version of yourself, whatever that may be. In its naturalness, it'll happen. And you can't change it, and you don't have free will to change in that parallel world that you're in right now, where you don't have the thing you want. You're in a different world, so you can't change that. You have to change worlds in order to get there by its own natural way. Okay, so you are what you are, so everything is as it is. The events which you observe are determined by the concept you have of yourself. Love this. Okay, so this is basically everything right here. The events which you observe are determined by the concept you have of yourself. So you're writing, directing, and producing the movie the world that you're living in right now. You are creating the world you're living in right now. So if anything's happening that you don't like, you're lying to yourself, okay? Because you scripted that yesterday. So the people that are treating you this way today, or the things that are going wrong today, you actually scripted that. You handed that script to those actors to tell you that today. So you are what you are, so everything is as it is. The events which you observe are determined by the concept you have of yourself and the world that you're living in. The world that you're living in is based on this right here, your concept of yourself. If you change your concept of yourself, you will transfer to a different world. The events ahead of you in time are altered. That means basically you're transferring to that new parallel reality, okay? When you change your version of yourself. But thus altered, they form again a deterministic sequence starting from the moment of this changed concept. You are a being with powers of intervention, which enable you by a change of your consciousness to alter the course of observed events. In fact, to change your future, to transfer to different worlds. Deny the evidence of the senses and assume the feeling of the wish field. That is free will, guys. So let's go over that one more time before we end this video. Free will. Free will. You do not have free will to affect your 3D world, which is the hologram, which is the current world you're living in. You can't affect that by trying to manipulate it in the 3D. You have to change your assumptions, your inner dialogues within you, and your concept of yourself, your version, your personality. You have to change all these things, become a different version of yourself that has everything that you want to have. Fall asleep with that, affirm throughout the day, changing this. That's what affirmations all throughout the day do. They change your version of yourself, okay? They're constantly changing your version of yourself, building you up to when you're going to meet your subconscious lover when you go to sleep. So you're building this up through the day, changing your version of yourself not by affirming something that someone needs to do something, by telling somebody to do something. That's your ego anyway. So you're disconnected. You're separated from the all-potent, from God. You're separated from that. You are a particle of God. So when you say me, my, or your, then you're attaching your ego to the whole thing. So you don't want to do that. In as much as your assumption is creative and forms an atmosphere, your assumption, if it be a noble one, increases your assurance and helps you to reach a higher level of being. So the better person that you become, the more selfless and loving of a person you become, the higher level of being you will be. Okay, so you will manifest a better world, okay, that will be congruent with your concept of yourself. Okay, so if, on the other hand, your assumptions be an unlovely one, it hinders you and makes your downward way swifter. So if you're doing, selfish things out there, you're trying to get over on people, you're trying to rob and hurt people, that's the world you're going to transfer to. And you don't want to go to that world because you're going to be dealing with people that are just like you, okay? Just like you. And that's what happens when you live this way. You will be put into a parallel reality where everyone is just like that. So you don't want that. Okay, so if you're being selfish, you're trying to hurt people, you're trying to undermine people, everyone in your world's going to be like this towards you. They're going to have this fake persona about them. They're just trying to manipulate you and get to you. If you're this way, if you're this type of person, that's the world you're going to be transferred to and be living in. So make sure you do not do this unless you want to be treated this way. Okay, so that's another thing you gotta think about yourself when you're creating things and when you're trying to make money. What kind of money do you want to make? What kind of person do you want to be while you're making this money? Okay, so if on the other hand your assumption be an unlovely one, it hinders you and makes your downward way swifter. Just as the lovely assumptions create a harmonious atmosphere, so the hard and bitter feelings create a hard and bitter atmosphere. And just like it was stated in Philippians 4:8, whatsoever things are pure, just, lovely, and of good report, think on these things. Create your version of yourself based on these things, okay? This means to make your assumptions the highest, noblest, happiest concepts. There is no better time to start than now. The present moment is always the most opportune and the only in which to eliminate all unlovely assumptions and to concentrate only on the good. As well as yourself, claim for others their divine inheritance. See only their good and the good in them. Stir the highest in others to confidence and self-assertion by your sincere assumption of their good, and you will be their prophet and their healer. For an inevitable fulfillment awaits all sustained assumptions. To win by assumption what you can never win by force. You win by assumption what you can never win by force, and that's a lot to do with free will, okay? You can't do anything by force in your 3D world. Try to change things in your 3D world. You could only change them by a new assumption, by a new version of yourself, by new inner dialogue, by new personality, a new personality. An assumption is a certain motion of consciousness. This motion, like all motion, exercises an influence on the surrounding substance, causing it to take the shape of echo and reflect the assumption. A change of fortune is a new direction and outlook, merely a change in arrangement of the same mind substance, which is consciousness. If you would change your life, you must begin at the very source with your own basic concept of yourself. Outer change, becoming part of organizations, political bodies, religious bodies, is not enough. The cause goes deeper. The essential change must take place within yourself, in your own concept of yourself. You must assume that you are what you want to be and continue therein. For the reality of your assumption has its being in complete independence of objective fact and will clothe itself in flesh if you persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. When you know that assumptions, if persisted and hardened into facts, then events which seem to the uninitiated mere accidents will be understood by you to be the logical and inevitable effects of your change of assumption, of your assumptions. Okay, so that's a big one, very important. And the important thing to bear in mind is that you have infinite free will in choosing your assumptions, but no power to determine conditions and events, because your assumptions are what produce and direct and write your world. Okay, so that's what he means right here. The important thing to bear in mind is that you have infinite free will in choosing your assumptions, but no power to determine conditions and events, because what you fell asleep with yesterday is determining all your conditions and events and the experiences you're happening today. So you have no free will to change those things because they were created yesterday by your assumptions. You cannot change those things by force. You have to, if something is happening in your world today, you must change that now within your present concept of yourself and create a new version of yourself now for tomorrow. Change it. Don't try to change it today with your 3D world, change it today with your interior world, and you can create nothing, okay? So that's what Neville Goddard is talking about, free will here. You can create nothing by effectuating or trying to change it by your 3D world presently, okay? You have to change your assumptions, but your assumptions determine what portion of creation you will experience or what world you will be transferred into based on your concept of yourself and your assumptions and your present level of awareness and your concept of yourself. All right, guys, that is the end of this video on free will. I love you guys very much. And don't forget to give me one thing you guys are grateful for, or anything you guys want to leave in the column box. I will read all your questions, all your comments. I read them all, okay? So leave any questions or comments you have in the box below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.